Hello everyone, welcome to Story Vault YouTube channel. Hope you enjoy the video. What is the most scariest but still unexplained thing that you have experienced? Story 1. The flight accident that didn't happen to me and several others in the Army. I was flying Hueys for the Army supporting the Ranger School in Georgia mountains in fall of 1978. At the end of a morning mission, I was on the controls flying down from the mountains to Camp Frank D. Merrill LZ northwest of Dahlonega, Georgia. I was relaxed and looking forward to refueling and returning to foot binning, now FT Moore, that afternoon. Something started bothering me, and I couldn't put my finger on it. After about a minute, I knew something was badly wrong with the aircraft and that we needed to land. The instruments were all normal. There was no unusual sound or vibration. The controls all handled normally, with no binding or sticking or play. As I had only about 450 hours of flight time, I alerted the other pilot, 3,000 hours, warrant officer, and asked him to take the controls to check things out. I thought that I might be imagining things, especially as a trained engineer. I couldn't identify anything that would lead to my feeling. He didn't believe me when I said something was wrong with the helicopter. He played around with it for a minute or so, said the bird is good, and handed the controls back to me. As soon as I got back on the controls, the feeling that the aircraft was bad came back, that something was really wrong. I declared an emergency landing and told the other pilot to call foot-binning flight ops on our UHF radio and give them the coordinates of this little two-helicopter clearing I could see on a gentle slope. We're putting down right there, and to contact the Camp Merrill aviation liaison on the local VHF in case something went bad during the landing. We landed, and after the rotors stopped turning, I immediately climbed up top and looked at the rotor hub. The longitudinal bearing that transmitted pitch information to the blades had failed. Instead of having less than few thousandths of an inch of play, it had over a quarter inch. The other pilot blanched when I asked him to take a look. A maintenance bird that arrived about 5 to 6 hours later with a test pilot and TI. The test pilot took a look, blanched, and asked the other pilot how he knew there was a problem. He pointed at me and said, "I didn't find it. I thought the bird was good." Lieutenant said the bird was bad, and we needed to land immediately. The maintenance test pilot asked me how I knew. I told him the truth. I have no idea. I just knew that we needed to land right away. He didn't believe me, insisting I must have heard or seen or felt something. The other pilot said, "No, he's telling the truth. I couldn't feel anything either." The crew chief also said he didn't detect anything. The maintenance test pilot said, "You are the luckiest guys alive. You should have been dead already. That bearing should have flown apart. You should have lost the rotor blades, all control of the aircraft, and been a ball of torn metal on the sides of a mountain." To this day, I still have no idea why or how I knew. It wasn't a little voice whispering in my ear or anything like that. It was just a feeling of really badness, the best I can describe it. And yeah, we both inspected that same bearing during the mission pre-flight. It was completely normal then. Myself, the other pilot, the crew chief, and possibly some of the Ranger cadre we'd ferried about should have died on that day. We didn't for no reason that I can put my finger on. Even now. Story 2. The night before my birthday in 1996, I dreamed that I was walking around near the peak of Everest. It was snowing hard, but I was quite comfortable. There was a tent. To announce my presence, I sang Goober Peas. The two men inside were frightened, and I tried to calm and cheer them. I stayed with them a while and comforted them. A few years later, I read about the Everest disaster in which mountaineers had to pitch a tent too high on Everest and died there, the night before my birthday in 1996. I can't explain it, but I hope I comforted them. Story 3. My father is very religious. He does not believe in ghosts, aliens, anything supernatural, or out of the ordinary. To this day, if this story is brought up, he will quickly find something else to talk about. My dad, younger brother, and I were at my family's hunting camp sleeping in the small trailer together on bunk beds. It was the day after Christmas, and it was chilly outside, so we got to bed early to wake up for hunting. In the middle of the night, my dad wakes up and starts screaming like he's being attacked. He then immediately began sobbing. This is the only time I've seen or heard my father cry. When he calmed down, his terrified sons asked what happened. He said he'd had a terrible nightmare about an endless surge of water that was sweeping families away and drowning children. I recall he said those words specifically. To have my dad tell me about a dream was strange in and of itself. You must understand all of this was completely out of character. Finally, I asked if we drowned in his dream because, at this point, I was sure there was some meaning to this vision. He said no and that all of the people looked Chinese. Now let me preface by saying we did not have internet access on our cell phones at this time, and we did not have any access to TV or news at our hunting property. Well, this was the morning of December 26, 2004. The very day, a massive earthquake struck Asia, which caused a tsunami, which in turn took the lives of nearly 228,000 people. I still believe in some kind of collective consciousness because of this event. How could I not? Comments. This gave me chills because a similar thing happened to me during the 2011 tsunami that hit Japan. The day it was happening, I was asleep, Eastern Standard Time. No TV or radio was on in my home, but I had a very vivid dream that I was on a beach. The architecture was Japanese, business signs were in Japanese, and everyone was Asian in my dream. A giant wave crashed through everything. I remember trying to help a little girl but couldn't, and we were just swept away. When I woke up in a cold sweat and went to work, people were talking about the tsunami. I've only told that story to about 3 people because I feel people will think I'm crazy or making it up. Okay, WTF. Back around that time, I had the same dream twice, but I never until now thought about a connection to a tsunami. Anyway, in the dream, I'm driving over this bridge in Asia, and water washes us away off the bridge. Then I wake up. This is wild. This is the same story with my aunt. She lives in Germany. She dreamed of people drowning and got worried because my family was traveling to Phuket the next day. She called, but my mother told her we already postponed our trip by 2 weeks because my school schedule. Within that week, tsunami at Phuket happened. 220,000 people died. My aunt only called us one other time, and she was right on that one too, and I shit you not, it was 9/11. My father did this. Fled from the movie theater one day saying that he could feel people being burned to death. Same exact time as a plane hit an apartment complex in Brazil, if I remember correctly. The first time it happened, he saw a woman leaving a hamburger joint, and he had a flash vision of her dead on the road, apparently ejected from her VW van. Beautiful red hair matted into the blood on the road. When he saw her leaving in a VW van, he abandoned his food and got in his car to chase after her. When he finally caught up, there was the smashed van, and someone was placing a jacket over her face, beautiful red hair flowing out onto the street. In case this sounds appealing to some, it was not. He hid it from nearly everyone, and much of what I learned came from my mother after he died. I had heard whispers, but he never wanted to bring it up himself. Big guy, college football player, doctor. He drank every night for the last 30 years of his life. The only place he was happy, according to him. This is a powerful story. Thank you for sharing it. I also believe in some sort of collective conscience because of several dreams about other people, only to learn the next day that the dream events are related to a real situation. For example, once I had a vivid dream about a specific person in my neighborhood sobbing. It turns out he was up all night with his dying dog. Story 4. Seeing 3 big bright circular lights above me randomly turn off while driving on a busy highway in NJ 287. I've driven a lot and seen a lot of planes at night go through clouds. That was the only experience I've had where I felt, and still feel, unsettled because the way they randomly turned off wasn't explained by cloud coverage or any other physical obstruction. To this day, I can't explain it without going down a major rabbit hole. Story 5. In 1989, I was driving on a familiar rural highway in broad daylight. I was rounding an easy bend and shocked to see a small town on the right side of the road. There's a sign, St. Vincent. A few of the things immediately noticeable were a shop called Webster Welding, an old-fashioned horse-drawn water pump for firefighting, several large poplars with dead tops, and black and white painted rocks along the street that faced the highway. I kept watching in the rear-view mirror, and it stayed visible. I drive a few miles, and there is a gentleman waving at me from beside his car. He's obviously broken down, and I pulled over. A quick chat, and I learn he's blown a tire and wrecked his rim. He asks if I'll drive him back to the town. No problem. And he gets, and off we go. The town is not there. It's a dusty Alberta crossroad. This fellow and I just sat in my truck in silence. I raised an arm and my hair was standing on end. His too. He said all the trees were dead. Are we dead? Eventually, I drove him to a nearby town. He simply got out of the truck and walked away. I remember it like it was yesterday. I could tell you what that town looked like in perfect detail. Story 6. I lived in a small one-bedroom under-house flat, and as my cat walked past the bedroom door, she looked at the wall above my head, froze, fluffed up, and hissed. She started moving to the side really slowly, still fluffed up and staring that spot above my head. I looked up, but there was nothing. When she got near the side of the door frame, she bolted. I got up to see if she was okay, and as I walked past the TV, it went off channel to static. My cat wanted out badly, and I went out with her. The TV went back to normal, and chastising myself, I opened the door to go back in, and as I took one step in, the TV went back to static. I stayed outside with my cat until she calmed down, and nothing like that ever happened again. I still think about it sometimes. Story 7. It's not quite unexplained. I slept with a radio on low as a kid because I was afraid of train whistles in the nearby rail yard. As I aged, it turned into reading books with the light and radio on until I fell asleep. I am autistic and have a fucked up sleep schedule. My parents were fine as long as I did something quiet if I couldn't sleep. One day, I spilled water on the radio. The radio broke in an odd way. It got all kinds of odd traffic, including radio stations that were definitely not from my home country. I was too young to quite understand it all. Then, a very strange sound started. It was a slow sound like someone grooving on a keyboard, but the notes were very random. It was super loud, and the longer it went on, the more I realized it wasn't a song. It wasn't a song, and it wasn't anything I was supposed to hear. It sounded very forbidden, and being a child with too much of an imagination, I wondered if it was aliens. I got my mom to wake up and look at it. She was baffled and said I should either try to tune to a different station or turn the radio off. I did, and I got a lot of strange interference the next night and so on, but not that specific sound. I got a new radio for Christmas that year. The incident stayed in my mind. In 2012-ish, I read a cracked article about unexplained sounds. I read something that seemed similar to what I heard. It wasn't aliens. It was a Russian number station for communicating with spies. Specifically, a type called a slow polytone. Each note I heard was part of a coded message. Now I listen for these regularly as a major hobby and have a lot of journals and knowledge gathered on it over the years. So, that's the end of the video. Hit the like button and subscribe. Have a good day and see you in the next video.